I said I was gonna make this video, but you didn't believe me. Why didn't you believe me? Readers, when it comes to Shang-Chi's Wenwu, there's a lot about his character that I respected as I watched the movie. Yes, removing the problematic aspects about his old Fu Manchu identity from the comic books and instead having him be the root of Killian's Mandarin myth in the MCU was definitely one of those things. Not only do I think that was pretty well handled, but the jab the movie took at white American appropriation as a result was spot on.
The Mandarin. He gave his figurehead the name of a chicken dish. And it worked. America was terrified of an orange.
Is there a part of me that wishes that we got to see Tony Stark and Wenwu duke it out? Yes, of course. But I truly have to give the writers of Shang-Chi credit for how they were able to craft Wenwu considering what they had at their disposal. But one of the things that I appreciate about Wenwu, other than what I previously mentioned, is that he's allowed to be complex without you having to forget that he's a villain for a reason when you watch him display said complexity. And to me, the best example of this is the murder of his wife Ying, and how it, quote-unquote, caused him to put on the 10 rings once more. Now, before I continue, know that this video will contain spoilers from Marvel Studios' Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. It's currently available on DVD, Blu-ray, and available to stream on Disney+, so I would advise you watch it on any of those platforms before continuing on with this video if you in fact care about spoilers. Cool? Cool. So, if you've seen my video explaining what I'd add to Xialing's end credits scene, then you know that Shang-Chi was the first movie that I decided to see in theaters once they decided to open back up to the public. I went with friends, we attended a matinee to deal with the least amount of people possible, masked up and social distance, the whole 9 yards. And outside of possible ways the movie tied into the entirety of the MCU as a whole, especially taking into consideration the events of Loki and how they would have factored into Shang-Chi's storytelling process, one of the things I was interested in witnessing was how different they decided to make Wenwu from his Mandarin and Fu Manchu counterpart. The result was having him decide to change his ways during his search for Ta Lo by finding love in Ying, Shang-Chi and Xialing's mother. Now, one of the aspects about this decision to try and make a character like Wenwu possibly redeemable was thanks to the tried and true yet admittedly overused trope of "I can change my beloved," now most commonly known by its meme name, "I can fix him." As both its actual and meme titles entails, I Can Fix Him / Change My Beloved involves one individual in a relationship seeing certain faults in their partner that have possibly grown to the point of being dangerous for them and intolerable for others or society as a whole, and believing that, to quote the actual TV Tropes page, the power and strength of their love will send said individual through a metamorphosis that will make them into their perfect partner.
Well, most women will tell you that you're a fool to think you can change a man, but those women are quitters.
This is displayed multiple times over the course of Shang-Chi, more specifically through the point of view of Wenwu. The declaration of the Ta Lo finding Wenwu unworthy of living in their village upon them becoming an item.
Your mother wanted us to live in Ta Lo. She asked permission from the elders and they refused. They said I wasn't worthy.
And the mutual decree of giving up what they knew in order to be together.
And so did I.
But what solidified Ying falling victim to the trope and Wenwu being her project to me is what Wenwu said out loud to a grieving 7-year-old Shang-Chi the night of Ying's murder.
他说我是可以改变的，我也可以放下一切。 是他错。
Now, while my takeaway from the importance of the scene is also necessary to understand the situation, that is Wenwu's mentality as a whole, just like one other turned my concerns over Xialing's end credit scene into a positive, I never would have been able to properly piece it together if a friend of mine didn't make me aware of one specific detail about his development after the movie was over. And that detail was when the Iron Gang murdered Ying upon seeking their revenge on Wenwu, and this exchange was had.
你丈夫想灭了我的门，我们今天是来回礼的。
他已经不是以前的那个人了。
那我不管。
As you can imagine, the situation accompanied by the result of the trope, I can change my beloved, is actually a 1-2 combo that perfectly reflects how villains are and can be affected by it. When one individual seeks to bring about change in their partner in this way, a common and unfortunate result in a good amount of fiction that features this trope is that they think the metamorphosis will in fact take place, only to end up being wrong. Not to say that characters that utilize this trope never succeed or that there aren't stories that exist that show that they do. I'm just saying it's a more common result since change only occurs in the individual when they want it, not when others want it for you. And while that wasn't necessarily the case for Wenwu as we see in the movie, it was her death at the hands of the Iron Gang that revealed that Wenwu's decision to change wasn't necessarily as genuine as it was romanticized to be. Ying wasn't lying when she said that Wenwu could change. We've seen him capable of it over the course of the film. The problem is that Wenwu willingly skipped a few steps in his pursuit of it because, in his case, the only way for him to truly leave the past behind is to acknowledge it. All of it. When Ying told Wenwu to leave the past behind, she was specifically talking about seeking self-forgiveness. An aspect of Wenwu seeking change was learning to forgive himself for all of his misdeeds that he did during his early days as the head of the Ten Rings. That way, as he entered this new phase of his life as a husband and a father, his conscience is clear, and he doesn't have the weight of his past self on his shoulders because he's come to terms with letting that aspect of himself go. However, as the movie displayed soon afterward, and my friend pointed out in our discussion after watching the movie, that doesn't immediately negate everything that he did to other people in his past, and shows that just because Wenwu has made peace with himself regarding this change, doesn't mean that he's done so with the people that's been affected by his past. That's because there's another step that one must take in order to truly leave the past behind, one that, on his journey for change, Wenwu did not do at all. And that's apologizing to those who one wrongs and seeks to make things right. Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings tries to drive home Wenwu's mania and villainy by using the paraphrased words of his late wife as a way of justifying returning to his old ways. In doing so, we find out that this aspect about himself never truly left, or that he even wanted it to leave. That he only really gave up the power because he wanted to be with Ying more. This was to be expected considering the two roles his character is replacing for Marvel Comics, Fu Manchu and the Mandarin. It also makes things a bit more disappointing though, because now that we know this decision to change in order to win Ying's heart is a bit saturated in the superficial, that increases the possibility that he knew the people that suffered under his warlord days would eventually find him. Yet even then, now with a wife and family, Wenwu did nothing to try and reach out to them, to try and make amends for what he did to them back in the day in order to possibly avert the tragedy that we saw play out in the movie. If anything, Wenwu used the fact that his half-baked attempt at change brought about such devastation as an excuse to return to a life he simply never wanted to give up.
如果我当初没有把他们摘下来，那些混蛋根本就不敢动手。
Because if Wenwu truly wanted to live in peace with his family, then more would have been necessary than just leaving his past behind and moving forward. He should have acknowledged what he did in his past, how his actions affected others that were still alive, and sought to make things right in order to move forward. After all, the one thing I preach on this channel when it comes to turning a new leaf and apologizing is that changed behavior is the true apology. In Wenwu's case, however, because he's more of an extreme character, his actions in order to prove said change have to be just as extreme. It wasn't enough for him to meet Ying and decide he doesn't want to be a warlord anymore. He has to try and make peace with those that he hurt in the past if he truly wants peace of his own. Because just because you made the decision to change and be better doesn't mean that there aren't people affected by your actions before you made the decision to change. They want answers, they want justice, they want closure, and addressing those desires in ways that will make things right between the two of you, especially since you were the cause of them once upon a time, is better than just ignoring them and hoping that they just go away. Because as Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings has demonstrated, they won't just go away. Some of them will grow and fester long enough to come back to bite you. And even though you've changed, even though you've dedicated time and effort to be better, you'll have no choice but to witness the consequences of your own actions that could have easily been avoided if you just put in the right time and effort into your decision to change, not just the aspects that allowed you for immediate gratification. Not only did Wenwu fall for this trap, but he fell for it hard, and refused to learn his lesson regarding it too. So much so that the consequences of his actions by the time the movie was over was him fucking around and finding out. But I digress, readers. Your homework assignment for the day. Write in the comment section below what you thought of Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings if you've seen it. Or if you feel like sharing with the rest of the class a situation you've seen in a movie or a TV series that mirrors that of Wenwu's own that made you aware of what happens when you make the decision to change your ways half-assedly, despite not truly wanting said change in the first place. Whichever question you decide to answer, I'd love to know your thoughts. If you want to help financially support the channel, you can join my Patreon by clicking the card at the end of the video or in the link in the description down below, where you can also find a link to my merchandise store. Or if you prefer to give a one-time donation, you can find links to my PayPal and my Ko-fi account in the description box as well. Also, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because I post new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and every other Friday. But until then, this is Readus 101. Class dismissed.